When I first arrived in Springwood Trails, I hoped to find a refuge from my intense work schedule. My name is Adrian Mitchell, and I serve as the Chief Investigator for a regional animal cruelty task force. My job involves investigating illegal trapping, neglect, and other crimes against wildlife and domestic animals. The position often takes me deep into rural backroads or bustling city centers, anywhere a tip leads. After spending years on the road, my phone constantly buzzing with urgent leads, I craved a calmer place to call home. Springwood Trails looked perfect. Tidy single-family houses spaced along tree-lined streets, a large communal park, and a local pond known for its flocks of geese. The real estate agent boasted about the neighborhood's friendly HOA, said to be vigilant but kind. I remember smiling at that phrase, hoping the vigilance extended to protecting nature rather than just fussing over lawn heights. The day I moved in, the late spring sun glinted off the pastel exteriors of the houses. I stepped out of my car, inhaling the clean breeze scented with freshly cut grass. That was when I encountered Marissa Ackland, known to everyone else as Karen, the president of the Springwood Trails Homeowners Association. She appeared on the sidewalk, arms folded over a thick binder labeled HOA Bylaws and Regulations. Karen was in her mid-50s, with carefully styled hair and an expression that wavered between forced politeness and immediate disapproval. She offered a curt greeting. "Welcome to Springwood Trails," she said. "I'm the HOA president. We keep this neighborhood orderly. Here's a copy of our guidelines. I suggest you read them thoroughly." Her intense gaze flicked across my moving van. I sensed an undercurrent of scrutiny, as if she was tallying potential infractions. I forced a friendly smile and introduced myself simply as Adrian, not mentioning my profession. "Thanks for the binder," I replied. "I'll review the rules and do my best to follow them." She nodded curtly, then marched away, leaving me both amused and uneasy. At the time, I shrugged it off. Countless HOAs have quirky rules, from mailbox color restrictions to mandates on fence height. But Karen's presence exuded a different vibe, more controlling, more personal. Little did I know her obsession with neighborhood standards would evolve into a cruel vendetta against local wildlife, and that her downfall would revolve around the very cause I dedicated my life to defending. Over the next few weeks, I settled into my new home. Springwood Trails had the suburban comforts I wanted, well-maintained sidewalks for evening strolls, neighborly waves from people doing yard work, and a modest yet pleasant community center. Each day, I commuted to my job at the Animal Protective Investigation Bureau, about 30 minutes away. Though I didn't flaunt my role, I never hid it either. If someone asked, I'd explain I worked with law enforcement on cases involving animal cruelty. I made new acquaintances, including Dana, who lived across the street and shared fresh vegetables from her garden, Elliot, a retiree who often sat on his porch reading novels, and a handful of others who chatted amiably about local gossip. The one consistent element in everyone's stories was Karen. She was known to roam the neighborhood in her silver SUV, camera phone at the ready, documenting any perceived violation. "She's harmless enough," Elliot chuckled once, "but she takes her presidential duties a bit too seriously." Privately, I questioned some of the HOA's guidelines on landscaping. For instance, residents needed permission to remove large bushes, even if they drew pests. The board insisted on uniformity, rarely granting exceptions. While I valued aesthetics, my day job exposed me to how certain wild animals adapt to suburban spaces, raccoons nesting in untrimmed hedges or foxes prowling near brush. Proper management of wildlife habitats was crucial for everyone's safety. Occasionally, I'd see Karen patrolling the sidewalks with an air of self-importance, binder tucked under her arm. Once, she frowned at my small front yard bird feeder. "We typically discourage bird feeders," she scolded. "They attract too many birds that defecate on sidewalks." I stared at her, somewhat taken aback. The feeder was tidy, and the birds provided a pleasant view. "I'll be mindful, but I enjoy watching them," I said politely. She pursed her lips. "We'll see if it becomes a nuisance," she declared, then pivoted away. My annoyance flared, but I let it go. The tension was mild enough, until I began hearing troubling whispers about wildlife issues in the neighborhood and sightings of wounded animals near the park. Something dark simmered beneath Springwood's pristine veneer, and I suspected Karen was at its center. One hot afternoon, after finishing my shift at the investigation bureau, I decided to walk through Springwood Park, the neighborhood's main communal green space. The park included a playground, a paved walking path, and a small grove of trees near a modest creek. Children played tag, joggers circled the path, and a few dog owners strolled with their pets. Despite the cheerful scene, my eye was drawn to a cluster of neighbors talking in hushed voices beside a flower bed. I approached and recognized Dana, who waved me over. She introduced me to the others, two of whom wore worried expressions. "Adrian," Dana said quietly. "They found an injured stray cat by the creek this morning. The poor thing's leg was caught in a small metal trap, like those steel jaw clamps. Absolutely horrifying." My heart skipped. I'd encountered such cruel devices too often in my line of work. The older woman among them, Mary, chimed in, voice shaking. "We suspect it's not a one-time thing. My neighbor's dog got hurt last week, punctured paw. We didn't realize it might be from a trap until now. It's unthinkable. Who would set these contraptions in our park?" I asked if they'd reported it. Dana nodded. "We told Karen. She said we must be mistaken, that no one in Springwood would do such a thing. She implied an outsider must be sneaking in to set them. Then she brushed us off, telling us not to stir panic." My jaw clenched. Setting illegal foothold traps in a public space was not only unethical, but a crime under state anti-cruelty statutes. I assured them I'd look into it. "If you find any more signs of traps, let me know immediately," I said. They thanked me, relief coloring their expressions. I continued my walk, scanning the creek area for any sign of tampering. While I didn't spot anything at first, the notion of hidden steel traps lurking in a suburban park churned my stomach. If a child's foot or a family pet got caught, it could be catastrophic. My professional instincts roared to life. I needed to investigate. Little did I suspect that the culprit might be the very person who claimed to maintain order in this community. That evening, I decided to do a discreet nighttime sweep of the park, hoping cooler temperatures would mean fewer people. Armed with a flashlight and my phone camera, I walked the perimeter near the creek. The moon hung low, illuminating the gentle flow of water. Crickets chirped. Still, tension coiled in my chest, a reminder of countless stakeouts I'd conducted. At first, I saw nothing suspicious, just tall grass, a few scattered soda cans. But after about 20 minutes, my flashlight glinted off something metallic near a clump of bushes. I knelt and realized it was a small, partially covered steel leg-hold trap. My stomach knotted. Carefully, I used a long stick to trigger the device, hearing its jaws snap shut with a vicious clang. Whoever placed it took steps to hide it with leaves and debris. This was no accident or leftover from a past era. It was deliberately set. Rage surged through me. Setting lethal or injuring traps in a public park was monstrous. If I wasn't a trained investigator, I might have been too horrified to proceed. But I took photos, carefully bagged the trap as evidence, and scoured the area for more. I found a second, the same style, near the base of a tree, also partially concealed. Goosebumps rose on my arms. This pattern was consistent with the rumor of multiple animals being harmed. While I didn't have direct proof who set them, the notion that an outsider was creeping into the park seemed odd. Typically, local residents with a misguided desire to control nuisance animals might do this. As I left the park, I felt torn. Legally, I should report to the local authorities. But I also recognized that I was new to Springwood, and if the HOA was involved, confronting them directly might hamper an official investigation. The next morning, I quietly filed a preliminary report with the local police precinct, leaving out my personal suspicion about the HOA. For now, I'd keep investigating independently while the police started their official protocol. In my gut, a single name kept surfacing: Karen. The following week, the police quietly launched an inquiry, with an officer visiting the park to confirm my findings. Meanwhile, Karen scheduled an emergency HOA meeting, ostensibly about community safety, though the details were vague. I attended, expecting some mention of the traps. The small clubhouse filled with about 20 neighbors, many sporting uneasy expressions. Karen stood at the front, flanked by 2 board members. Her posture radiated authority. She opened the meeting by addressing recent incidents in the park. But instead of condemning the traps or acknowledging any wrongdoing, she pivoted to blame outsiders. "We suspect a transient or irresponsible pet owner is placing these devices," Karen declared. "However, We advise residents not to overreact. Continue enjoying the park, but remain vigilant. A younger neighbor, Luis, spoke up. We want to know what the HOA is doing to remove these traps and protect our animals. My friend's dog was injured. Karen offered a thin smile. We're investigating possible solutions, but let's not spread rumors. No need for panic. I raised my hand. Karen, I discovered at least 2 steel jaw traps personally, near the creek. They're illegal. The police are now involved. We need thorough sweeps, signage, immediate closure of certain park areas if necessary. She glared at me. Mr. Mitchell, while we appreciate your concern, the HOA board decides how best to handle it. We can't close the park on unverified claims. It's vital to maintain normalcy and property values. She stressed the last 2 words as if they mattered more than injured animals. A hush fell. My blood boiled. Her tone was patronizing, dismissive of serious danger. But I maintained composure. Property values won't matter if lawsuits arise from maimed pets, or worse, a child stepping on a trap. That drew some murmurs of agreement from neighbors. Karen's nostrils flared. We have no conclusive proof these traps are new or were placed by anyone here. Let's end the speculation. She quickly moved the meeting on to a random topic about landscaping. The tension was palpable. Leaving the meeting, I traded a knowing look with Dana and Harold, who were outraged by Karen's brush-off. Secretly, I swore I'd unravel who was behind the traps. If it was Karen or someone under her direction, they'd face the full force of my expertise. Animal cruelty was my domain, and I wouldn't let it fester in my own neighborhood. One afternoon, while trimming my hedges, I noticed Karen's silver SUV idling across the street. She sat inside, seemingly observing me. The moment I glanced in her direction, the vehicle pulled away, almost as if she didn't want to be caught watching. My pulse spiked. Was she wary that I was investigating the traps? A day later, as I walked my rescue dog, Rusty, near the park, I saw Karen near the tree lean, crouching as if adjusting something in the grass. When she spotted me, she jolted upright, gave a forced wave, and hurried off. My instincts screamed that she might be checking or resetting a device. I wanted to confront her on the spot, but lacked concrete evidence. Instead, I decided to keep a closer eye. That evening, around dusk, I staked out a vantage point with a view of the park's entrance. My plan was to see if Karen or anyone else arrived after hours. Sure enough, about an hour into the stakeout, I saw Karen's SUV rolling up with headlights off. She parked, stepped out carrying a small bag, and vanished into the darkness. Hairs on my neck stood up. Slipping from my vehicle, I quietly followed at a distance. The night was still. I heard rustling, the faint clank of metal. My heart pounded. If she was setting traps, this was the moment to catch her. But how to document it without risking confrontation? I switched my phone to camera mode, staying behind shrubs. After about 10 minutes, Karen re-emerged, the bag seemingly lighter. She hurried back to her SUV and drove away. I waited, then cautiously approached the area she'd visited. My flashlight caught a fresh disturbance of dirt near a cluster of bushes. Carefully, I peeled back leaves to reveal a newly placed steel trap, its jaws open and menacing. My phone camera recorded everything. I stood there, adrenaline surging. This was near-direct proof. Karen was setting illegal traps to remove or kill wildlife she deemed pests. The cruelty and recklessness appalled me. It was one thing to have draconian HOA rules about yard aesthetics, quite another to wage a secret war on local animals. Furious, yet methodical, I documented the scene for evidence, then disarmed the trap. The next step, confront her with the law. Early the next morning, I contacted the local police detective assigned to the Springwood traps case, forwarded them the photos and video I'd captured. They were stunned. "So you're certain it's Ms. Ackland, the HOA president?" the detective asked. I explained my direct observation and how I was, in fact, an investigator specializing in such cases. The detective's voice brimmed with relief. "We'll coordinate with you. If she's behind it, we can charge her with multiple counts under state anti-cruelty statutes." I hung up, my mind swirling. The detective wanted to proceed carefully, gather enough evidence to ensure a solid case. We planned a sting operation. That very evening, local officers would do a covert watch at the park. If Karen returned to check her traps, they'd catch her red-handed. Meanwhile, I'd remain on standby to lend my professional expertise on the charges. It was an odd sensation. Usually, I traveled to unknown towns, investigating people I'd never met. Now, the suspect was my neighbor, a woman who prided herself on controlling every detail of the community. The irony that she was clueless about my real job wasn't lost on me. She likely believed she could bully me into compliance, never guessing I was a state-certified cruelty investigator. That afternoon, I found a letter in my mailbox from the HOA. It claimed my front yard bird feeder was disruptive and demanded its removal within a week or face fines. It was so petty I almost laughed. She was doubling down on harassing me while orchestrating a secret massacre of wildlife. Enough was enough. As dusk approached, I felt a mixture of excitement and dread. If Karen showed up, the police would pounce. My job was to confirm any potential cruelty charges. All we needed was for her to appear with another trap or to check the existing ones. The final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The sting operation commenced at sundown. A plainclothes officer parked inconspicuously near the park entrance, while another patrolled the far side. I stationed myself in a borrowed unmarked car with tinted windows, vantage point set. The night air was muggy, thick with the chirping of crickets. Time crawled. My phone glowed with occasional messages from the detective. No movement yet. The clock passed 9 p.m., then 10 p.m. Just when we began doubting she'd show, a silhouette appeared. Karen's SUV gliding quietly to the curb. My heart kicked into high gear. She stepped out, wearing dark clothes, carrying what looked like a cloth sack. She glanced around, then slipped into the park. Over the next 15 minutes, the officers and I watched her methodically move to several spots, presumably checking or placing more traps. My vantage allowed me partial visibility, but the important part was that the officers were capturing video. Once she was clearly caught in the act, they'd move in. Finally, the detective's voice crackled in my earpiece. "We have enough. Let's move." The plan was for uniformed officers to approach from both sides, cornering her in the grove. I stayed put initially, letting them do their standard procedure, but the detective wanted me on scene to identify the trap as the same type that injured the cat. I hopped out of the car, quietly followed the second officer. As we neared, we heard Karen rummaging in the undergrowth. Then an officer's flashlight blazed. "Police, stay where you are," he barked. Karen froze, turning to flee, but another flashlight pinned her from behind. She was trapped, ironically. In the glare, I saw her panic-stricken face. She held a small metal device in one hand, clearly another trap. My stomach churned at her blatant cruelty. The officers rushed in, commanding her to set the item down and keep her hands visible. She sputtered, "What is this? You have no right." Then she spotted me stepping forward. Recognizing me, her eyes bulged with fury and betrayal. "You, Adrian? You set me up," she snarled. I squared my shoulders. "You set illegal traps in a public park, Karen. This is a crime." She tried to bluster, but the police read her Miranda rights. Stunned, she gaped as they handcuffed her. In that moment, I sensed the magnitude of her downfall. The so-called Queen of Springwood Trails was about to face the unyielding consequences of harming animals. Karen's arrest reverberated through Springwood Trails like a thunderclap. Within hours, text chains and social media buzzed with the news. HOA president arrested for illegal trapping. Some neighbors found it hard to believe. Others, who'd suspected her authoritarian streak for years, were outraged yet not entirely shocked. Dana, who had initially reported the stray cat's injury, was simultaneously relieved and appalled. All this time, we believed some stranger was terrorizing the animals, but it was her. "Right here among us," she told me, voice trembling with emotion. Elliot, the retiree, shook his head in disbelief, remembering times Karen boasted about keeping pests under control. While it might have been tempting to celebrate, a heavy sadness lay beneath the relief. People realized how easily cruelty could hide behind an official title. Many worried about how many animals suffered or died from Karen's traps before we discovered them. The local vet confirmed treating 2 more dogs in recent weeks with suspicious injuries. The day after the arrest, I attended an impromptu neighborhood gathering near the park. The new acting HOA representative apologized profusely, promising to investigate any further traps left behind. We formed a volunteer search team, combing the creek area for more hidden devices. Over a dozen leg-hold traps surfaced, all of similar make, cunningly concealed. The scope of Karen's operation stunned us. She'd effectively waged a personal war on wildlife that ruined her notion of a perfect community. Meanwhile, the local press latched onto the story. Headlines read, HOA president charged with animal cruelty. Resident investigator cracks the case. Reporters asked me for statements. I gave a measured response, clarifying that the official lead was the local detective, but confirming my role as a state animal cruelty investigator living in the neighborhood. The irony was not lost on the public. Karen had no idea she was plotting cruelty in the backyard of a top official in that very field. Karen spent a night in jail before posting bail. Released pending trial, she returned to her home under a cloud of suspicion and hostility. Many neighbors shunned her, refusing to meet her gaze. She tried to defend herself on the HOA's online message board, claiming she only set traps to protect the neighborhood from rabid raccoons or stray cats. But the photographic evidence and the scale of her activity shattered any credibility. The local district attorney's office took the case seriously, thanks in part to multiple animals being injured. The charges included felony animal cruelty, illegal possession and use of prohibited traps, and reckless endangerment of public safety. Additional civil actions loomed. Some pet owners considered lawsuits for veterinary bills. Karen's allies, few as they were, muttered about entrapment or fabrication, but the police had Karen on video, physically placing the devices. Her own bag of traps was confiscated. Attempting to push blame onto an infestation of wild critters only underscored her disregard for the law. Meanwhile, the HOA board distanced itself. They removed Karen from her president role, issuing a statement that her actions were inconsistent with the values of Springwood Trails. A special election was scheduled to fill her vacancy. Residents demanded stricter oversight and a thorough revision of rules. The tide had turned harshly against her. The once feared figure found herself ostracized, facing the possibility of prison time. As for me, I cooperated with prosecutors, supplying expert testimony on the cruelty of leg-hold traps and the typical injuries inflicted on wildlife and pets. In normal circumstances, I felt empathy for suspects, but Karen's arrogance and lack of remorse dampened any pity. She threatened me in passing, claiming I'd ruined her reputation, but her words rang hollow. The die was cast. She was going to trial, and the evidence was overwhelming. Months passed as the case wound toward trial. Karen's defense attorney tried to strike a plea deal, but the DA, spurred by local outrage and multiple victimized animals, refused anything lenient. The charges carried potential years in prison, hefty fines, and restitution for medical bills. Not to mention the civil suits from neighbors whose pets were harmed. Springwood Trails underwent a cultural shift. Freed from Karen's oppressive oversight, the new HOA board began relaxing petty regulations. They encouraged planting pollinator-friendly gardens, installing safe wildlife corridors, and forging a partnership with local rescue groups. The community discovered a kinder approach, ironically spurred by the darkest chapter in its history. I occasionally glimpsed Karen in her front yard, stooped and gray-faced, no longer the proud figure she was. She wore a look of anger and anxiety, perhaps aware that her house, once her symbol of power, might be forfeit if she lost big in court. Indeed, rumors circulated that she risked losing her property to pay legal fees and potential judgments. Some neighbors took petty glee in her downfall, though most just wanted justice served. In late autumn, the trial date was set. The court summoned me as a key witness. I spent hours compiling official records, referencing state laws on cruelty and trap prohibitions. The DA emphasized that my testimony would link the injuries to a broader pattern of cruelty, establishing Karen's deliberate, repeated intent. With every detail, I hoped to secure a verdict that would protect future animals from her lethal devices. The trial took place in the Brookhaven County Courthouse, a stately red brick building downtown. Media interest was high, given the sensational angle, a once powerful HOA leader indicted for hidden animal traps. Locals filled the gallery, hush settling as the judge entered. Karen sat at the defense table, dressed in conservative attire, face pale. Her attorney attempted to spin a narrative about out-of-control wildlife menacing the neighborhood, painting Karen as a misguided caretaker who resorted to extreme measures. But the prosecution had a mountain of evidence: eyewitness accounts, confiscated traps, medical records of injured pets, and the night sting footage. Not to mention my professional analysis. When I took the stand, I explained the nature of steel jaw traps, how they clamp onto limbs with brutal force, often causing fractures, deep lacerations, or disfigurement. These traps are indiscriminate, I testified. They injure any creature that steps on them, pet, wildlife, even a child. Their use is banned in most contexts for their cruelty. Karen's attorney tried to suggest I had a vendetta, that I set her up. Calmly, I recounted the nights I'd found multiple traps, how I documented them, and the covert police operation that caught her actively placing one. My credentials as a chief investigator for animal cruelty cases lent gravitas. I had no personal vendetta, only the duty to protect living beings from inhumane devices. Over a week, the prosecution paraded more damning facts. Neighbors who spotted Karen prowling after dark, vet bills for animals maimed, recorded phone messages where Karen ranted about varmints that ruin our lawns. The defense's argument collapsed under the weight of direct evidence. By the time closing arguments ended, the verdict felt inevitable. After 2 days of jury deliberation, the foreperson pronounced the final verdict: guilty on all major charges: felony animal cruelty, illegal trapping, and endangering the public. Karen sank into her seat, tears brimming. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The judge thanked the jury, then scheduled sentencing for the following month. Karen was led away on bail revocation, as the severity of her offenses warranted potential remand. The community's reaction was swift. Some expressed pity for a once popular figure undone by her extremes, but most felt relief that justice prevailed. The local news carried headlines: HOA president found guilty, illegal wildlife, traps confirmed. Reporters sought me out for a quote. I maintained a professional stance. The evidence speaks for itself. Such cruelty has no place in our neighborhoods. While the verdict offered closure, it couldn't erase the harm done. The possibility of restitution for injured pet owners and the local rescue group remained. Meanwhile, the new HOA leadership pressed forward, vowing to ensure Springwood trails would remain free of inhumane or destructive practices. Their bylaws were updated to explicitly forbid private trapping or lethal solutions for wildlife, encouraging humane methods instead. I, too, felt a sense of closure, but also a lingering sadness for the animals who suffered. The entire fiasco underscored how a single individual's obsession with control could escalate into criminal acts. Yet it also proved that vigilant neighbors, combined with law enforcement, could protect the voiceless. A chilly winter morning found the courthouse once again filled, this time for Karen's sentencing. She arrived in a plain jumpsuit, her once proud demeanor shattered. The prosecution recommended a strong sentence, citing her calculated, repeated acts that harmed multiple creatures. The defense begged for leniency, claiming she'd already lost her reputation, job prospects, and social standing. The judge was unsympathetic. In a firm tone, he condemned Karen's callous disregard for life and her selfish pursuit of an aesthetically pristine environment at the cost of cruelty and danger. Then he handed down the sentence: imprisonment, 3 years in state prison for felony animal cruelty and illegal trapping. Restitution: she was to pay all veterinary bills and other damages, which amounted to tens of thousands of dollars. Property confiscation: if she failed to meet restitution, her Springwood Trails home could be seized or placed under a heavy lien to compensate victims. Mandatory prohibition: she was barred from holding any leadership position in an HOA or similar entity indefinitely. Karen teared up, trembling as the judge's words sealed her fate. The bailiff escorted her out, handcuffed. Silence blanketed the room. Some neighbors expressed pity. She lost everything. Others quietly nodded, trusting the system's verdict. Outside, a crowd of onlookers parted as the squad car took Karen away. I felt a wave of relief, tinged with sadness. This once petty tyrant had stooped to horrific cruelty, and the law answered with unwavering severity. In the end, no veneer of HOA authority could shield her from real consequences. With Karen gone, Springwood Trails emerged from a long shadow. The new HOA presidency, led by a kind-hearted woman named Marcia Lopez, championed transparency and empathy. They formed a volunteer watch group to ensure the park stayed trap-free, collaborating with local animal rescue teams. Pet owners felt safer. Dog walkers again strolled the creek paths without fear. A sense of camaraderie spread. Residents, who once avoided openly opposing Karen, now freely discussed ways to promote a more wildlife-friendly environment. They introduced humane deterrents for nuisance animals, like enclosed compost bins, no uncovered trash, and proper fencing, rather than lethal solutions. Slowly but surely, the park's natural ecosystem recovered, minus the menace of hidden steel jaws. I joined an advisory subcommittee, offering my expertise on peaceful human-wildlife coexistence. We arranged talks on how to handle stray cats, raccoons, and even the occasional coyote sighting, always prioritizing humane methods. The pain of the trap incidents lingered, but it fueled progress. One mild spring morning, I took a leisurely walk by the creek. The park's grass shimmered with dew, and birds chirped overhead. In place of the old hush of fear, laughter rang out. Kids playing frisbee, neighbors chatting about gardening tips. Even small wild critters seemed more visible, rummaging safely among the bushes. I paused to watch a pair of ducks paddle in the water, relieved that no hidden traps awaited them. Such transformations underscored that a community could indeed learn from tragedy. The nightmares of clamped metal jaws became a cautionary tale, urging compassion and responsible stewardship. Springwood Trails was, at last, a place of real harmony, not the superficial perfection Karen once enforced. Months passed. Karen's story left an indelible mark not just on Springwood Trails, but also in professional circles dealing with animal cruelty. My bureau occasionally fielded calls from other communities suspecting illegal traps. Each time I recounted how we caught a rogue HOA president secretly waging war on wildlife. The lesson: cruelty can lurk behind polished facades. Privately, I wrestled with a tinge of pity for Karen. She now sat in prison, her property possibly confiscated to cover restitution. Her actions destroyed her future. Yet her cruelty was deliberate, no fleeting lapse. She'd chosen a path that inflicted pain on innocent creatures, ignoring repeated warnings. If there was a cautionary moral, it was that an obsession with control or order can morph into monstrous acts. During a routine staff meeting at the Investigation Bureau, my supervisor praised the thoroughness of the Springwood case. "It's rare for such sabotage to happen in a suburban setting," he remarked. "But your vigilance prevented even more harm." My colleagues recognized I had risked personal relationships in my own neighborhood, but seeing the positive shift in Springwood Trails validated the risk. At times, neighbors asked if I'd remain in Springwood long-term. Without hesitation, I'd say yes. Despite the rocky start, the place felt like home, an evolving community that chose empathy over fear. The saga of Karen taught me that vigilance is necessary anywhere, but it also taught me that hope can blossom from the darkest revelations. That's how justice often works, shining a light on cruelty, then building a kinder future from the rubble. Even with Karen gone, echoes of her reign of terror occasionally surfaced. A year later, while re-landscaping part of the park, a groundskeeper discovered another half-buried steel trap near a rarely used footpath. Everyone was stunned. It seemed likely that Karen had placed it long ago and never retrieved it. The device, rusted from exposure, had become jammed, no longer dangerous. Still, the find was a grim reminder that healing often requires digging up old wounds. The new HOA board swiftly organized a park purge day, inviting volunteers to methodically search every corner for any leftover contraptions. I participated, scanning the underbrush with a metal detector. The event turned into a community rally, with families bringing snacks, kids cheering whenever we found something harmless like a lost frisbee. Ultimately, no additional traps emerged, just that single leftover. But the exercise bonded neighbors, ensuring no hidden threat remained. During the cleanup, I chatted with Joel, a local policeman who'd been part of Karen's arrest. He told me the case was occasionally cited in training sessions as an example of how surprising criminals can be. No one expected a middle-aged HOA lady to run a clandestine trapping campaign, he joked, shaking his head. But that's the world we live in. That evening, we ended Park Purge Day with a small barbecue near the creek. People laughed, kids chased each other with water balloons, and at one point, someone put on music. The sense of relief was palpable, an affirmation that the fearsome days were gone. For me, It was a symbol of a community that overcame cruelty through unity. If only Karen could see how her absence allowed genuine fellowship to flourish. Occasionally, we received bits of news about Karen's prison sentence. Word had it she was up for a parole hearing after serving a year, but the board reviewing her case remained skeptical. Even if paroled early, her life in Springwood was over. Her property had been seized to pay off enormous restitution and fines, and the HOA had banned her from rejoining anyway. Some neighbors speculated on whether she felt remorse. One rumor suggested she wrote a letter to a friend, claiming she never intended to hurt innocent pets, only pest animals. Another rumor said she still insisted the punishment was too harsh. The question of redemption lingered. Could someone so coldly methodical about maiming animals truly change? I tried not to dwell on it. My professional experience taught me that some individuals cling to rationalizations, never fully owning their guilt. If Karen did find genuine remorse, I hoped she'd keep away from any environment where she could repeat her actions. The memory of that cat's mangled leg or the dog's punctured paw left me with zero tolerance for returning to old patterns. Meanwhile, Springwood trails pressed on. We built a new dog park with carefully designed fencing and safe ground cover. The local Humane Society set up an adoption event in the neighborhood, drawing enthusiastic families. Many said they felt proud to live in a place that overcame a scandal and emerged more compassionate. I was proud too. I recognized the emotional scars left by Karen's spree, but each step forward proved cruelty hadn't defined Springwood. Humanity had. Life in Springwood trails eventually found its new normal. People rarely mentioned Karen by name, referring to that era as the trap fiasco or the old HOA days. New families moved in, drawn by the sense of community. They heard rumors of past events, but found a neighborhood devoted to safety and kindness. My personal life also stabilized. Freed from the drama, I found time to cultivate friendships. Dana's garden produce remained a highlight. Her tomatoes were legendary. Elliot, the retiree, started a bird-watching club that included my once controversial feeder. We spotted cardinals, finches, even a rare hummingbird. The irony that Karen had once complained about the bird feeder was not lost on us. At the Animal Protective Investigation Bureau, I continued tackling complicated cases statewide. Yet, none hit home as intensely as the ordeal in Springwood. My colleagues teased that I'd turned my own neighborhood into a successful operation. In truth, the experience reinforced the core principle of my work. Cruelty can surface anywhere, even behind white picket fences, and it demands vigilance. In quieter moments, strolling along the creek or sipping coffee on my porch, I reflected on how swiftly a single person's obsession can metastasize into widespread harm, but also how a dedicated few, neighbors, law enforcement, and outraged community, can come together to stop it. Karen's scheme collapsed under the weight of truth. Her illusions of a perfect neighborhood ironically destroyed her own life. 2 years after Karen's arrest, Springwood Trails was thriving. The park's wildlife bounced back, with small mammals and birds reclaiming habitats. Where once neighbors spoke in hushed tones about a mysterious trapper, they now swapped gardening tips and arranged block parties. The memory of steel traps buried in leaves felt distant, overshadowed by the new ethos of care. On a breezy summer day, the HOA hosted an outdoor community festival. Food trucks lined the entrance, local bands played acoustic sets, and kids sold lemonade for charity. I volunteered at a booth for the local rescue center, explaining humane wildlife solutions to visitors. The crowd was cheerful, unafraid. Not a single trap or paranoid rule overshadowed the joy. During a lull, Dana approached me with a grin. "It's amazing how far we've come, isn't it?" She gestured to the lively scene. I nodded, recalling how a mere couple of years ago, fear and secrecy plagued these same paths. "Yeah," I said. "We overcame a lot." She gave me a quick hug. "Thanks for all you did. We couldn't have asked for a better person to stand up for our animals." I smiled, acknowledging how fate placed me, a chief animal cruelty investigator, right where I needed to be. The festival ended in a rousing applause for the local volunteers who'd kept Springwood safe and cruelty-free. No one mentioned Karen, but her absence was the biggest transformation of all. As dusk settled, I lingered, watching the final families wander home. The streetlights clicked on, illuminating houses that no longer felt overshadowed by a tyrant's demands. Something new, genuine unity, reigned. I felt deeply at peace, certain that if a threat ever arose again, this community would confront it with compassion, not hidden jaws of steel. Thus concluded the saga of Karen's illegal wildlife traps. She had believed her power absolute, her cruelty unstoppable. But in Springwood Trails, empathy and justice won out. In the end, the penalty for harming innocent creatures was swift and sure: prison, confiscation, and a lonely, bitter legacy. Meanwhile, the neighborhood she once terrorized flourished in her wake, forever changed, yet stronger, kinder, and unafraid.